This is Dream Power Radio, the place where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Hello, and welcome to Dream Power Radio on the amazing Women and Men of Power Network, the world's leading positive programming network, powered by Raven International. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, the Dream Coach. This is a show where we talk about dreams, both daytime and nighttime dreams, and how you can use them to make the internal shift to a life you love and rediscover the truth of who you really are. As a dream life coach, I work with clients to help them find their purposes and passions, especially when they're feeling stuck where they are. I find that dreams are a useful tool in helping them uncover things about themselves they've never realized or were afraid to admit to themselves. Often, by working with the insights revealed through their dreams, they're able to chart a path towards self-actualization. But sometimes their dreams, while useful in diagnosing the problem, aren't enough to provide the cure. When that happens, I reach for other modalities in my toolbox to help them reach their desired goals. Recently, I came across a technique that can also help reveal hidden reasons why we're not living the lives we want. It's called timeline therapy. And here to explain what it is and its benefits is neuroproductivity expert Susanna Goulder. Susanna is the founder and CEO of Get Brainiac Smart Speaking and Coaching, a certified coach, growth IQ advisor, and personality assessment evaluator. Welcome to Dream Power Radio, Susanna.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be with you today.
Oh, it's my pleasure as well. Susanna, I always like to start off with the basics. So tell me, what is the definition of timeline therapy?
Well, you like to start off with the basics, and I like to start off with a quote. So a mystic once said that the release of negative emotions, so release like a balloon that's being let go of and floats up and disappears in the air, the release of a negative emotion leads to love. And timeline therapy is basically allowing yourself to let go of negative emotions, using the unconscious mind to assist you to release negative emotions. And with that release, you're letting go of limiting beliefs and limiting decisions that have stacked up and been carried by you like baggage for years and years and years. And in the release of the negative emotions, you're freed. You're freed to live that dream life because you're not weighed down by the emotions of anger, sadness, fear, guilt, and hurt.
Okay, well, that sounds wonderful. Now tell me, how does that work?
How does it work? It's actually very simple. It's different than talk therapy. So talk therapy, Debbie, if you've ever been in a therapist's office, and for those of us who are listening, if you've ever been in a therapist's office, you look at the content of an event or a situation, and you analyze it, and you look at it from different perspectives, and you look at it from another viewpoint, until at some point in time, you come to an understanding about it where you can live with it in a new way. With timeline therapy, you don't look at the content. You look at the emotion that's connected to the content, because our emotions are neurologically connected to us. So no matter what the content is, you'll still feel the same experience of anger. No matter what the content is, you'll still feel that same experience of fear. So if you release the fear, so for all those that are listening, and Debbie, imagine something, if there's something that right now is troubling you, any situation or event, big or small, imagine what it would be like if suddenly there was a release of the emotion and you were no longer feeling and experiencing that situation or event through that emotion, who would you be?
Who would you be? You be who you want to be, obviously.
You'd be who you want to be because you'd be free of the stress of the emotional load, the baggage. It would be let go. And then in being that freedom, being that, having that freedom, you can actually stand more in the presence of being your loving self, loving yourself, loving what you're doing, being the love and the passion of what brings out the best of you. And in the same thing with your relationship with others. It's really cool.
It does sound pretty amazing. And it's very interesting that you touch on emotion being the central point there, because when we work with dreams, one of the first things we look at is, what is the emotional effect of this dream, both in the dream and when you awake and talk about it, because the emotion is such a strong indicator of where we need to go. But tell me, how does timeline therapy, you talk about how it's different from talk therapy, but how is it different from other techniques that also deal with emotional aspects like hypnosis or guided meditation, for example?
Oh, that's a really good question. I am a neuroproductivity expert, which means that for years I've studied the brain. And I've studied the brain because of life challenges that have gotten in my way and interfered with my productivity. So I had health problems. I had a brain tumor, I had brain surgery, I had migraines, and I had to figure out a way to stay productive or let go of the life that I loved. And so I dove into neuroscience, and that led one to the next to the next. So in neuroscience, we know about neuroplasticity. And we know that we can rewire our brain. You know that, right? Audience members, you know that, right? You've heard of neuroplasticity. We can rewire our brain. And through neuroscience, there's lots of tools to do it, but it takes a really, really, really long time. Meditation, I am heavily meditated. I meditate every day because it helps the mind, the wiring of the mind be calm and come from a place that empowers you to think better, to boost your brain power. Hypnosis and timeline therapy reprogram the brain in the most efficient technology that I've come across through neuroscience, through metaphysical practices, through everything I could possibly find to, help myself be the person I dream of being and help my clients be the person they long to be and have longed to be all their lives and need some efficient processes. What's great and what I hope everyone listening will take away is just like technology is getting faster these days, and boy, is it, the technology of personal growth and development is getting faster. It only needs to take about 20 minutes to release a lifelong limiting belief. And you might not believe that, so let's use timeline therapy to help you believe it, because it's amazing. Why wait?
That does sound amazing. How could it only take 20 minutes?
Would you like an example?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right, so here's what convinced me. When I was being trained, my trainer said, this is going to be a life-changing experience for you. And I'm like, yeah, right. And it was in numerous ways. This is just one of stories for me, people that I worked with and my clients. So when I was about 5 years old, I was with my brother and my two sisters. And we played this game that my brother would have a cup of water. And he was older than all of us. And he would chase us down the hallway, around through the next hallway to my sister's rooms. And I was only 5. I was the littlest one. I may have been 4. And so all of a sudden we're in his room, and I don't know what made us go, but it was like, go, run. It was like, run for your lives. And the oldest one, Lisa, was first down the hallway, around the corner and into the room. And right behind her was my older sister, Diane, down the hallway, around the corner and into the room. And then there was little me, and I was ahead of Larry, and he was big. He's like 9 years older than me. I go down the hallway, around the corner, and just as I get to the room, they shut the door. And then I turn around and I hear Larry coming through the doorway into the hallway I was in, and he throws the water on me, the 5-year-old girl. I tumble into tears, and that simple little experience that really could have been forgotten became a staple perception of my life. I always had a perception that when in a group, I would be shut out. And so I had a helpless feeling from the age of 5 on, whether it was with family, business, social engagements. I felt abandoned and left out consistently. I took it to many, many therapists, told this story. We just and the story was like baggage. It stayed with me in all my life. And then I did timeline therapy. And in the timeline, what happens is, well, we'll get to that in 1 second. I'll just tell the end of the story. So what happened in the timeline was I went back to that event and then to before the event happened, like as if I was that little girl before that happened. And in that moment, like the phone is ringing, an epiphany came. Because as I'm looking at her crying at that closed door, I was able to see that to the right of me was another door to another room. And to the left of me was another door to another room. And I could have just run into those doors and closed the door. All these years, I never thought of that. And so suddenly I had an aha, Debbie, from now on, when I feel shut out, instead of like, oh, I'm not part of that, I see there are other options. And that original limiting belief about my whole life, my whole experience with people has changed from abandonment to I got options and I'm empowered and I'm okay. He can't get me, or whatever it is chasing after me. I can have a choice. I could be empowered. That happened in 20 minutes.
That is amazing. And you just touched upon something I think is so important, is the idea of choice, because we don't believe we have choice. When it's out in front of us, we don't see it. And a therapy like this can help you see, yes, you do have a choice and you can do it. My question for you, though, is what made it stick? I mean, I could see how it gave you that epiphany, but how did you keep it and not let other life experiences that are going on just sort of make that sort of fade away over time?
That's a really good question. And as far as choices go, for any listeners, you might hear my story, but the same thing applies whether it's trauma, whether it's experiences with money, whether it's experiences with success, whether it's experiences of just finding your purpose. No matter what your story is, the same kind of experience can happen. And for what happened to me, I wish so my background is also I used to work in the film business. And so if I had 2 pairs of glasses, Debbie, I would put on one and say, these are the glasses I wore all my life. And it was like the timeline therapy had me take them off, maybe put on another pair of glasses, but even more, it was like those glasses I took off, I no longer looked through that. It was like that same thing of the balloon being lifted and going away. It was the new understanding, the new insight. Oh, I never realized I had choices. Cleared the rest of the limiting belief. And then with timeline therapy, well, we should talk about the timeline so that I could tell people about that. Is now a good time?
Well, we're going to get into it. Now is actually time we have to take a break.
Okay.
So we'll get to it after the break. We are speaking with Susanna Goulder all about timeline therapy, and we'll be right back. What do Thomas Jefferson, Elias Howe, and Paul McCartney have in common? They all understood the value of dreams, and as a result, the ideas, inventions, and creations from their dreams affect us to this day. What great ideas are you leaving on your pillow at night? Sign up for a complimentary consultation at my website, thedreamcoach.net, and discover why your dreams are a terrible thing to waste.
Welcome back to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Yes, welcome back to Dream Power Radio. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, and we are speaking all about timeline therapy with Susanna Goulder. Well, Susanna, right before the break, you were about to tell us about the timeline. So tell us.
So with memory, all of our memories are stored in our unconscious mind in a timeline. Each one's subsequently, one after another, in a timeline. So a timeline, we don't want to think of it logically, because how well do logic and emotions go together? Like, logic has tried to figure out emotions for years and it doesn't work. So we rely on our unconscious mind. So I'm going to ask you a question before I explain anything. And I invite you to visualize or feel this. And I'm saying this to everyone listening right now. I'm going to ask you a question. And the first thought that comes up is the right one. So my question is, if there was a timeline, and there is, and there was a past, and there was a future, where is your timeline?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah, I'd be curious.
Well, I think going back into experiences that have affected us, when I was 5, when I felt I lost my voice. And for years, I was very, very shy, didn't speak up, was timid, all the adjectives that describe somebody who is withdrawn and doesn't participate. And it took me a very long time to get beyond that through all kinds of therapies and modalities. And that's why dreams are so important for me, because that really took me over the top and led me on the path I'm on now, which is a total different life.
Yeah. Completely the flip of the coin. So where is that memory? Is it behind you? Is it in front of you? Is it to the left? Is it to the right? All your past memories, where are they physically?
For me, they're in my past.
So is that behind you or to the left?
Behind me, like way behind me.
And where is your future then?
My future's right in front of me.
So then for Debbie, it's a line from right behind her to right in front of her. For some people, the past might go from the left and the future to the right. For some people, the past might be the right and the future to the left. For some people like me, it's really weird, but it's like the past is behind me over my left shoulder and the future is ahead of me over my right shoulder. Some people, it might be a zigzag. It really doesn't matter. It's allowing the unconscious mind. You just ask the unconscious mind, where in my timeline is my past in relationship to me? Where is my future? So what we do is we have the person just use their unconscious and an active imagination, no pressure, no judgment. And we ask you to imagine yourself above your body right now, looking down on the timeline. So if you were to do that, Debbie, you'd look down and you'd see your timeline goes back behind where you're sitting. You'd see you sitting there. You'd see your timeline of memories going way back behind you. And you'd see your future going way ahead of you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so everybody listening, if you felt like doing this or just picturing what's happening, you're above your body looking at you in this now moment, and you're seeing where the timeline goes towards your past and how it goes through you to your future. It doesn't matter where the line is. There's no good or bad. It's just whatever you're seeing is fine. So now what we do with the timeline is we talk about that event when you were 5, right? And so you being out of your body, so to speak, just imagine yourself going back behind yourself to the line in the timeline where you're 5. Does this make sense? Any questions? So if you were looking down on your timeline, you'd see yourself in that situation where you were 5 and you lost your voice. Can you see yourself? Imagine that.
Yes.
So then the next thing we want to do is ask your unconscious mind. Well, first we let you feel that experience just for a moment. Like you go in, you embody it, you experience it just momentarily. We don't need to belabor the feelings of the moment, but just to get back there. And then you come back out, and then we ask your unconscious mind, when was the event's origin? So you might not remember consciously right now. The origin of that event may have been when you were 5. There might have been an earlier event when you were 2 or 1. And so I would ask you, and whatever thought comes to mind, and it's amazing what comes up. Some people will say, no, that was the origin event. Some people will say, when I was 1. Then I'll ask, was an origin event in the womb? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Was the origin in past lives? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Whatever comes up is what we work with. Then we invite you, once we found that origin event, to go back in the timeline to the origin, above it, just viewing down to the origin. And then we ask you to go back before the origin, because before the origin, Debbie, where was the emotion? Did it exist before the origin event, the first time that something caused the loss of voice? Were there any emotions about it before that?
Interesting.
Yeah. Are you with me? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. And, if I was in a session, I think I would be really pondering that right now.
And so, again, we don't really want to go into the thinking and understanding. It's more like just inviting sort of an as if there was an origin. When would it be? Whatever comes up is fine. But what's most important is taking you before the event ever happened. So before that moment where my brother chased me down the hallway, 1 hour before, there were no emotions around abandonment. There were none. I was just a happy little 5-year-old. It was since that moment of crying that latched on to me. So in each person, with every situation, with every event, timeline therapy takes you back to the origin and then takes you before it ever happened, where we were free. And then it invites, were you going to say something?
No, I was going to say, it goes back to that whole concept of how our emotions run us.
Exactly. And so how our emotions run us. So what happens if you go back before the emotion was triggered and stand there and look at that moment that emotion was triggered, what we call the origin event, and ask yourself if there was some benefit, if there was a learning from this, what would it be? So I sat there when I was going through this, looking at that poor little girl crying, shut out. And I'm like, how could there be a learning from this? But as I sat there in my wisdom self at this age, free, not in it, but before it happened, looking, saying, if there was some benefit out of it, what would it be? And that's when I pulled back and saw, oh my God, there are other doors. I could have protected myself. And that's when I said, I've never seen options. And from now on, no matter what happens, I'll see there are other options. I was like, oh my God. And in no matter what you've gone through or anyone else has gone through, there will be that moment of insight that releases the baggage. And it's like a domino effect. Every time that emotion came up from then until now, and we do a process to bring you back to the now, it's all cleaned. There's no residue. And like that balloon floating up, it's no longer there. What you're left with is the insight of, wow, now I understand and how I could use this. Now I have the learning and I'm good to go.
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
Is there anyone who is a best candidate for timeline therapy, or can it be effective for everyone?
Absolutely. Best for everyone. This is a technique that should not be held, in specific. This needs to be something everybody knows. Nobody needs to be locked down. I believe that we are in a time of massive transformation, and all those people who are calling for it are getting new tools, new opportunities where transformation is happening so much faster than it used to happen. And so if you're listening to this now, timeline therapy could help you 20 minutes for each one of the limiting beliefs and limiting decisions, no matter what is happening in your life. Now, sometimes there might be some preliminary work. What I mean is, like, I like to give the personality assessment, which shows what people's ruin points are, the biggest thing in their life that's holding them back. It shows their compulsions. It shows the syndromes. It's an amazing mirror of what the unconscious knows about you that may not be conscious in you, and yet you're living. And so that becomes our roadmap to what to work with. And then I do what's called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which is, it's sort of timeline therapy was actually created by Tad James. He was a neuro-linguistic program master. And he actually was just talking to somebody at a bus stop. They were just talking about her emotions. She was stuck. And they just got into a conversation of the timeline. And in that strange moment, she suddenly was free of this emotion. And he goes, no, find it. Where is it? She goes, no, I'm free. And that's where timeline therapy started. So sometimes we do a little neuro-linguistic programming depending on what somebody's going through, so that they kind of, like a bicycle, you get things up to speed so that you're ready for timeline therapy, but you don't necessarily always need that.
That is amazing. I tell you, we're just scratching the surface when it comes to timeline therapy, but we're almost out of time. So my final question to you is, how can people find out more about you and timeline therapy?
Well, first, I want to just say thank you so much, Debbie. I love your Dream Radio. There's so much valuable information here. And for anyone who is feeling called, wants to release those limiting beliefs, the limiting decisions about money, about success, about comparing yourself to others, so that you're free to really find that purpose, I have a couple of offers. One is, if you'd like to experience the personality assessment, I'll do it for you for free. You take the assessment and I'll give you a 1 hour long evaluation that's going to help you see what your unconscious knows and can reveal to you in your conscious mind, so that some of the unconscious limiting decisions and behaviors can be brought into awareness. That's free. If you would like to have a timeline therapy session, you could also contact me. Or if you'd like to have a full package of NLP timeline therapy, starting with the personality assessment, that's also an option for you. You could reach me by calling or texting 914-564-9090 to book a session. Or you could go to my website, Susanna at SusannaGoulderSpeaker.com. That is Susanna, Susanna, at Susanna, Susanna, Goulder, G as in George, OULD as in David, ER, Speaker, SPEAKER.com. And if you do that / coaching, it'll take you right to the coaching page.
That is so wonderful. Well, Susanna, thank you so much for being on Dream Power Radio today. We've been speaking with Susanna Goulder about transformation through timeline therapy. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. If you have, please tell all your friends, follow me, and drop a positive review on your podcast site. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector-Weissman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.
You've been listening to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman. For more information on Debbie or to sign up for her newsletter, go to dreampowerradio.com. This has been Dream Power Radio on the amazing Women and Men of Power Network, the world's leading positive programming network, powered by Raven International.